Nicholas Kirkland's Neurological Warfare and United States Experiments Part 7. In this episode, we will continue the mind control experiments that the US, and probably other countries, are very likely working on. The experiments are done to see to what extent targets will act out their frustrations, hatreds, fears, etc. to see to what extent the target's induced conditions affect their ability to operate as normal human beings and determine which conditions are most effective in rendering them incapable of operating as normal human beings. To see whether targets can overcome their revulsion to various ideas and conversely see repulsive actions in a favorable light. For example, can a Jew or Arab be made to eat pork, or can a perfectly normal person be made to commit incest? To see if certain drugs, particularly mood swing drugs and antidepressant drugs, as well as certain vitamins and minerals, influence the outcome of particular mind control methods on targets. To see whether handlers can permanently blank out or eliminate certain words and thoughts in targets. To determine the surroundings, location, house construction materials, implements, electrical devices, etc., weather conditions, time of year, moon, seasons, etc., proximity to particular installations, oil refineries, relate hours, etc., that best allow the neurological weapons to focus on and be used against targets. To determine what foibles and vulnerabilities in targets can best be exploited for psychological purposes and control of those individuals. To determine how the torture methods affect the targets and which ones affect him the worst. To study the duration of particular physical effects on the targets and whether those effects are permanent or temporary. To see whether they can cause impotency or dramatically increase the libido. To see if it is possible to change the sexual orientation of certain factions of the population, heterosexual to homosexual and homosexual to heterosexual, using mind control methods. To see whether handlers can make targets say words out of context in speaking with others. To determine whether it is possible to make targets always see the negative aspects in everyday matters. To determine what stimulus and/or method gets the best results from the mind-mining process. To train handlers who represent the main language groups in their various regional accents so that they can be deployed to other countries for covert operations. To cause targets to believe absurd things that do not happen or do not exist. For example, the U.S. intelligence community convinced a young Muslim detainee at Guantanamo to believe that he had lost his hands and legs. To determine the most effective interrogation technique in the mind-mining process, that is asking questions, showing photos to the target, etc. to analyze the target's visual thoughts for clues to information not revealed in the target's narrative or his answers to questions. Examining those thoughts visually may reveal clues concerning a particular strategic site or a particular weapon or an impending action or a particular militarily or politically important person whom the target knows whom the handlers may not have been aware of. To determine whether handlers can gain the confidence of the target in their telepathic conversations with him. They do this in providing helpful information to the target, warning him of various dangers, and telling him to trust them. To determine whether third parties can be made to communicate telepathically with the target without the previous knowledge of either one of them. To determine what physical effects can be affected by psychological suggestion and to what extent. To determine what type target can best analyze what is happening to them vis-à-vis mind control, based on their profession or occupation, their educational level, their gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, etc. to analyze the handlers' backgrounds, qualifications, and the results of their ISMC methods to establish criteria for selecting future handlers. To test the efficacy of interchanging or replacing handlers for targets, especially when those targets move from country to country. To determine what type of targets can most easily be persuaded, either neurologically through whispers, etc., or by bribes and other forms of compensation, etc., to commit treason and perhaps assassinate important figures. to improve their propagandistic capability to deceive the public. Read the mind control experiments, disseminating misinformation through the internet, psychiatrists, the media, law enforcement, etc., as targets become more open and their numbers become more threatening. To test the ability of mind control personnel to work effectively with their allies in mind control operations. To determine what emotions and mind control techniques are most likely to cause combat troops to surrender. To test the ability of targets to see holographic images and record their reactions to those images. To test targets' reactions to and acceptance of induced dreams, in which handlers fish for information by introducing certain people, places, and things. To record the levels of frustration, anxiety, irritation, and other emotions of targets under particular kinds and stages of stress. To test the target's reactions to certain smells, sounds, and tastes and see whether they can change those senses. To test the damage or alteration of the eyesight of targets to make them see double, to remove their side vision, cause them to see in various colors or not to see certain colors or images. To test such physical effects as the pinpricks to determine the most sensitive areas of the target's bodies. On our next episode, we will finish this episode and summarize Nicholas Kirkland article. Visit www.targetedindividualscanada.wordpress.com for more information.